I do want to say, before I get started here, thank you on the Ecuador recognition, and I just have to honestly recognize my colleague, Kent Robertson, who's at the table here, because he was my partner every step of the way on the Ecuador litigation. So thank you, Kent. And Amer, thank you for your very kind words, and good evening, everybody. You know, one of my fondest memories as the chairman of PAGE was actually getting to present Amer with the Distinguished Service Award. Tonight, our roles are reversed, and that makes this evening's honor even more gratifying. I also want to extend my congratulations to Sandra. I loved your comments this evening. Sandra, it's a privilege to stand in your company, as well as the company of the past recipients of the Distinguished Service and Hall of Fame Awards. Doing so is truly a career highlight for me. Thank you. I want to express my deep appreciation to the PAGE Society for this recognition. I've been a member of PAGE for more than 20 years, and I'm a direct beneficiary of the many relationships that I've had the chance to cultivate during my years in the society. And of course, I want to thank my lovely wife, Josephine. Your grace, intelligence, and beauty are unmatched. Tonight's honor reflects your love, support, and unwavering partnership. While tonight's honor is very gratifying, it would be wrong to suggest that I arrived here solely by my own doing. In truth, tonight's award reflects the cumulative impact of the many gifts that have been given to me over the course of my career. None of us who have received this recognition got here on our own. We've all benefited from those who gave of themselves to give us a leg up. Mentors who imparted wisdom and candid advice, colleagues who've had our back and allowed us to excel, clients that pushed us to be better at all we do, and family members who made sacrifices so we could pour our full energies into the demanding nature of our jobs. So this evening, I'd like to touch on some of the gifts that have not only defined my career, but continue to define who I am. Let me start with the gift of courage. I was raised by a single mother, and it wasn't until early adulthood that I fully appreciated the many sacrifices my mom made to give my brother, sister, and me a normal life. She was determined to spare us from the burdens that she shouldered. Like many single parents, my mom drew her strength and determination from her kids. To give you a sense of my mom and the extent of her integrity and courage, I'd like to share a brief story that she revealed to me late in her life. It was the early 1960s. I was 4. My mom was a bookkeeper, but she dreamed of bigger things. She had applied for a job at the local TV station in Denver, Colorado. She considered this opportunity her dream job. In sharing her story, my mom went into detail about how she had prepared for the interview, the line of questions raised by the hiring manager, and how she had responded. It came as no surprise when my mom explained that she nailed the interview and was offered the job of her dreams. But unfortunately, that's not the end of her story. After being offered the job, my mom wanted to confirm her starting salary. So she said to the hiring manager, "I understand my starting salary will be $9,000 a year, a good salary in the early 60s. To her disbelief, the hiring manager responded without hesitation, "No, that would be the salary had we hired a man." Hearing this news, my mom didn't try to convince the hiring manager of her qualifications. He clearly knew what they were. Nor did she try to negotiate for a few more dollars to make the salary more palatable. No, my mom did what you would expect a strong, courageous person to do. She turned the job down. She thanked the man for his time and walked away. Think about the courage my mom displayed in the face of such arrogance. Despite having 3 kids to feed, my mom had the integrity and courage to walk away from her dream job. She rejected this man's unfair offer because it was the right thing to do. To this day, I can't recall what prompted my mom to reveal this story to me, but I've clearly felt its effect on me ever since. My mom was brave. She gave me the gift of courage. The gift of access. It was 1980. The economy was in the tank. I was 23 and unemployed. I'd just graduated from college and was looking for my first job in communications. I started my job search at a time when the supply of PR grads was greater than the demand for my newly minted skills. Anybody run into that? Okay. So despite my determination, I wasn't having much luck. In fact, my job search was becoming downright discouraging. It got to the point that some of my friends suggested that I should just take any job to get my career kick-started. But I had a conviction that public relations was my calling, and giving up isn't in my nature. So I persisted, and my persistence soon turned to good fortune. I came across a job listing in the Denver Post that changed my life from that day forward. As it turns out, the hiring manager for the job was Don Ferguson, a longtime member of Page, who is now retired. At the time, Don was looking for someone who could backfill for him, especially when he was on the road. And Don was always on the road. In the end, I didn't get the job with Don. Years later, he told me it was because his colleagues felt I looked too young to sit in for him when he was traveling. In fairness, they were probably right. But like me, Don is a persistent fellow, only even more so. Even though Don couldn't put me on his payroll, he had a plan. He made a call to the head of his local PR firm, a gentleman named Mike Gahn. Don encouraged Mike to meet with me, which Mike graciously agreed to do. I'll never forget Mike's first comment. He said, "Dave, I don't know if I want someone with 20 years of experience or if I want someone like you, so make up my mind for me." Well, nearly 40 years later, I stand here because Don opened a door for me. He set my career into motion. He went on to be my boss and to open up several more doors for me over the course of my career, including with many people in this room tonight. For those of you who know Don, you know what an incredibly gracious and decent man he is. Don gave me the gift of access, the gift of feedback. In 1996, I had just become the head of global communications at Levi Strauss & Company, reporting to Levi's chairman and CEO, Bob Haas. I had had a long-standing and positive relationship with Bob, but I'd never been a direct report before assuming my new role. As the new head of communications, I was now leading a team of colleagues, many of whom had previously been my peers. That sound familiar too? It quickly became apparent that one of my team members wasn't meeting Bob's expectations. The person was Bob's chief speechwriter. English was this person's second language, and this is where things got a bit tricky. Like most CEOs, Bob had high expectations. He was also a very accomplished leader. In fact, one of his notable accomplishments was he had been valedictorian at UC Berkeley with a degree in English. I think you can see where this is going. During one of my weekly meetings with Bob, the topic of this individual came up. Bob said, "Dave, I know you're staying late into the night to fix this person's work before it lands on my desk." He went on, "You can continue to do this and wreck your new marriage to Josephine, or you can take the action we both know you need to take to address the problem." He then finished with exacting clarity. "Because what's happened to date doesn't reflect on you, but if you don't take corrective action, it will." Bob's blunt feedback felt like a fastball aimed at my head. But Bob wasn't trying to alarm me. He was using it as a teaching moment. Bob taught me that as a leader, you must make hard decisions, decisions that sometimes affect people's careers and even their livelihoods. My conversation with Bob that day changed me. I learned that I was no longer accountable solely for my own performance. I was now accountable for the collective performance of my team. Some might consider Bob's feedback a bit harsh for someone new in the job, but for me, Bob's feedback was a gift. The gift of perspective. My longtime friend and mentor, John Anoda, once told me, "Dave, you get many chances to get it right with your career, but you only get one chance to get it right with your kids." And what was most interesting about my interaction with John was the fact that I had no kids at the time. Ava hadn't been born. The more I thought about what John had said, the more I began to figure out just what he meant. John was telling me that getting it right outside the workplace was more important than getting it right inside the workplace. He was teaching me about what matters most and keeping perspective. And the need for perspective has never been more real for me than in recent months. In late June, my colleagues and I lost one of our closest coworkers, a person in the prime of her life. Her name was Katie Winter. Katie passed away after her long battle with cancer. Of course, the news of Katie's death came as a blow to all of us. While her battle with cancer had extended for nearly 4 years, she was often in the office. She was always upbeat, always determined, and always a tremendous source of energy, ideas, and personal warmth. Katie also shielded us from the true extent of her illness. Katie was one of my direct reports, and while many of our conversations focused on work, in recent months, they most often focused on her life outside of work. We talked about her 2 young daughters, whom she adored. We talked about how she feared that her illness was placing a huge burden on her husband. And we talked about how much she cherished the many hours she spent with her dad, because her dad was the person that always took her to her cancer treatments, more than 50 in all. Until her final days, Katie never lost hope. She fought her illness with remarkable fortitude, courage, and most of all, grace. That's simply who she was. I tell this story because when you face a situation like Katie's, there is no playbook. There is no prescriptive set of actions to follow. And that's when character and perspective matter most. John, you and Katie gave me the gift of perspective. The gift of partnership. I often joke that at home I'm surrounded by 3 generations of women. My lovely wife, Josephine, my beautiful daughter, Ava, and my feisty mother-in-law, Maria Carmen, who still likes to climb on ladders at age 87. After all, I'm just one guy going up against the forces of 3 strong and formidable females. But while I like to poke fun at my home life, I could not succeed in my job without the unwavering partnership of Josephine and the unconditional support of my family. No way, no how. And I would suggest that that's true for many of us in this room. The jobs we occupy are simply too demanding to go at it alone. We need partners outside of work who give us a foundation and make us better. That kind of partnership often falls to our family members. Few people know that when Ava was born, Josephine walked away from a career that was every bit as promising as mine. She did it to raise our daughter, and Josephine is an amazing mother. She's Ava's North Star. Josephine, you give me the gift of partnership every day. The gift of exploration. There's a famous story inside Chevron about a legendary geologist named Max Steinecke. Max was exploring for oil above the vast, still-to-be-discovered Daman field in Saudi Arabia's eastern province, and he wasn't having any luck. He had drilled 6 dry wells. Costs were out of control. Our home office in San Francisco was out of patience. They told Max to stop drilling, pack things up, and return home. Ignoring orders to return home, Max pressed on. He drilled a 7th well at the Daman field, and to everyone's surprise, but his own, Max made the first commercial discovery of oil in Saudi Arabia in 1936, and the rest is history. He'd found the biggest prize in the history of global commerce, and to this day, Daman number 7 is still producing. For nearly 15 years, I've had the good fortune to lead my own team of Chevron explorers. They just happen to be an exploration party of communicators. They're my Max Steineckes, and like the legendary geologist, they persevered to make discoveries many doubted were possible, especially for an energy company. In 2005, before Twitter and when Facebook was in its infancy, my team of communications explorers launched a social platform called willyoujoinus.com. Working with the Aspen Institute, they facilitated an online dialogue on the global energy issues of the day. It was a first in our industry. Later, my team worked with the economists to create an online game called Ville. It was a tool to help people better understand energy realities by letting people pick the fuels they wanted to fuel their city. This game scored how well players balanced such variables as the energy source, price, and carbon intensity. Ville was another first in our industry. A few years back, as Amer mentioned, we launched a global campaign called We Agree. The campaign was about finding common ground on a range of issues. It conveyed why Chevron agreed that putting the planet ahead of profits, investing in small businesses, and advancing the communities in which we operate was the right way to do business. We Agree didn't only set us apart, it was ahead of its time. Today, we are using data, predictive modeling, augmented and virtual reality, and emerging social platforms to reinvent the way we design communications. And like all great explorers, we are watching, and we are learning, and we are drawing inspiration from the exploration of others, including what many of you are doing inside your own companies. My team's persistence, determination, and commitment to excellence inspires me every day. They have given me the gift of exploration. Let me close with a final thought. I could have dedicated my remarks tonight to my predictions about the future of our profession, but I chose not to do so. After all, who am I to suggest that I have a better sense of what lies ahead for us than does each of you? I don't. Instead, I purposely focused on a few of the leadership traits that I believe will be most important to influencing the future of our profession, wherever it might take us. I am convinced that those who act with courage and integrity, those who create opportunity for others, those who maintain perspective in the most trying times, and those who are willing to explore new ideas without fear of failure will be the leaders who are always pushing, always defining, always reinventing our profession and advancing it forward. Now, looking back across, can't believe this, 4 decades spent in our profession, I can still see my younger self eagerly standing at the onset of my career, but not knowing where my journey might ultimately lead. As I stand here this evening, I can say without hesitation, it's been a remarkable journey, one that has taken me to every corner of the world, allowed me to work inside some of the world's most storied companies, and extended me the chance to engage with some of the most exceptional leaders in business, society, government, and our profession. What I want you to know tonight is that I hold reverence and gratitude for the instrumental roles that Paige and so many of you played on my journey. Thank you.